Hey everybody, it's me again. My name is Emily Taege and I'm here with part 3 of our branding series. So the first part, just to review, the first part was what is brand. The second part was what is brand identity. And today we're going to talk about what is branding. And then the next video is going to be who are stakeholders, just so you know where we're heading in the video series. And I don't even know what part 5 is going to be yet, because I haven't gotten a chance to move far enough along in the book that I'm going through. So today's video is what is branding. So at a very high level, we're going to talk about what different types of branding there are, when is the appropriate time to start the branding process, and a 5-step process of branding as it pertains to the book. And I have the book over here again just to show you. Here's the cover, and the pages that we're going to be going over today are pages 6 and 7. So if you wanted to look at that while I'm going through this video. And then after that initial introduction of what is branding, we're going to do a quick branding process exercise for strategy and identity. So there's a 5-step process, and 2 of the steps are strategy and identity. And even though the book is probably going to get into more detail about what each of those are, just while I was thinking about the pages, I kind of came up with my own exercise that I wanted to go through while I worked on branding for my own channel. Let me see here. Oh, and so that strategy, that exercise, there's going to be two sets of questions. The first set of questions is what's working well and what's not working well. That's for the strategy. And the next one for identity is who you are and who you are not. So I have like a little matrix that I set up of those 4 questions. And then the last section of this video, we're going to talk about just the questions that I came up with when I was looking at these pages. And you can write them down if you want to, but you don't need to, because I'm going to have all of them in the video outline. I just wanted to rattle them off so that you knew that they were there, but don't feel like you need to write them all down, because the link for those questions will be provided in the video description. So and then the last thing that I like to do when I'm doing these videos is just leave on a key takeaway. Like, you've watched this whole thing, what is the most important thing that you should remember from this video? And then just finally at the very end, I'll talk about what the next video is going to be. Okay, so let's just get started here. So the first section here is very high level. What is branding? So I have a couple of bullet points up here on the screen just to read them off to you real quick. Awareness and customer loyalty. Branding comes from the top, and branding is why they choose you. And the final thing is branding comes from a desire to lead. So just let's talk about those 4 things in detail as it pertains to YouTube. So the first thing is awareness and customer loyalty. So we've already talked a bit about this already, but having recognizable content is really helpful in getting return customers. So if all of your videos are consistently branded in a way that makes them immediately recognizable, people will keep coming back to that content because they either enjoy it or they think it's funny or whatever, and they're going to click on that link before they even know what the content is necessarily. So that'll keep people coming back for more. Another great example is doing something what I'm doing right here is you're making a series and you want people to keep coming back to see the next installation of the series. So you would want all of those video series to look as consistent as possible so that you can, and then find a way for those series to line up and progress in sequential order so that it's easy to just jump to the next section. So this next one comes from the top. If you're on YouTube and you're doing this alone, well then congratulations, branding is coming from the top because you are in charge of defining your own brand. So eventually you're going to need to think about, in the next video, I'm going to talk about stakeholders. And these are people that are influencing your brand. Like, even though you're an independent person making content for YouTube, there's still going to be people that have input into what your brand is and isn't, or even what they perceive your brand to be, and that will inform how you interact with these people. And that'll come. I'll explain that more in detail in the next video. So let's see. So the next one is branding offers people. Branding looks for an opportunity to express why people should choose you over another person. So it's if you're looking at the space on YouTube and you've got some other YouTubers that are maybe putting out similar content to yours, that's at least the bar. And then it's your job to raise the bar so that people choose your content over another similar YouTuber. And then the last thing, and this kind of ties into the one right before this, is why they choose you, is that ultimately what you're looking to be is a leader in the space, so that they choose you because you're the leader. So branding is an opportunity to show, to legitimize yourself, to make yourself the leader. So let's just get into the different types of branding. So let's see here. I've got a couple things up on the list here that I'm going to go through. I'll just rattle them off quick. There's company branding, there's co-branding, digital branding, personal branding, cause branding. And those are the ones that are listed in the book. And there might actually be more of them, but as I mentioned before, I'm not looking at any other resources right now while I'm doing this project, so that I can just keep it simple. So let's just go through these through the lens of YouTube. Company branding would be like Coca-Cola having a YouTube channel and putting their commercials up there for people to enjoy. Co-branding, I see a lot of this on YouTube, kind of. I see a lot of collaborations happening between popular YouTubers. So maybe one YouTuber that's doing similar content to another YouTuber might get together and do a video together. That's kind of co-branding, but I would think of co-branding as being a more long-term strategy. If you're actually going to merge two channels into one. So that would be an opportunity for you to take one YouTuber's personality and yours and trying to merge them together into one personality. So that would be extremely tricky to do, to negotiate how you two are going to become one unit. And then obviously there's digital branding. So this would be anything online. And this is very relevant to this discussion. We're talking about YouTube, and I'll probably be working on Twitter, and I also have a website that I'm working on. So these are all opportunities for me to streamline my brand so that people, when they ping back and forth between these 3 different platforms and they interact with me on any of those platforms, that they see myself, that brand, come through on each one. And then the last one is cause branding. So if you're doing like a nonprofit work or something like that, you can align your brand with a certain social responsibility. It's similar to company branding because really you're just talking about an entity that's bigger than a single person. So, but usually, of course, the goals are different. And I have lots of great questions coming up in subsequent videos about, you know, unique value propositions and what promises do you make to your viewers. And so that's going to come later as well. Okay, so the next thing is when to start the process of branding. And the book actually has a lot of examples and great examples, but I just picked out a few that were relevant to myself and may also be relevant to you as just if you're starting a new YouTube channel. So some of the reasons they listed is that it's a new business and that nobody knows who you are. And so this is an opportunity for you to use branding in a way that will communicate who you are. Another reason might be, so maybe let's say you already have a YouTube channel, but you're struggling with, unifying your presentation. So this would be inconsistency. You're not presenting a consistent face across all of the different platforms where people can find you. So this is an opportunity to kind of smooth all of that out. Another reason would be that whatever face that you're presenting on YouTube right now might not present you shoulder to shoulder with your competition. So maybe your competition's way up here and you're way down here. And so you need to use branding as a way to legitimize yourself, basically, to move you up the ladder and put yourself at the same level as your competition. So as I said, there are lots more in the books. I recommend buying that book so you can read the other reasons, because you might find some more that are relevant to you. Okay, so let's jump into this section. This is kind of the meat of this section. What is the process of branding? And this is just very high level because the rest of the book has chapters for each of these processes that they lay out. And I would also say that some of these processes might exclude something that if you have experience in design and you're used to this process of branding, you might notice that something's missing because you have your own process defined, and that's okay. I'm sure that it's maybe either a fault of the book, or there is truly something missing, or maybe they take one of these high level processes and your step is somewhere nested in the middle. So at a very high level, there are 5 steps to branding, and the first one is conduct research. So that would be, of course, what I'm doing right now for my own channel, is that I'm just kind of doing a lot of thinking and stewing and trying to come up with everything that I need to know about myself and this channel, and how can I present a consistent face for people. So the next thing would be to clarify the strategy of the brand. What's working well and what's not working well? Those are the 2 questions that I came up with. They weren't actually in the book, so they may have some other things that they're going to be including later, but it ties into the exercise that I'm going to show in the last half of this video. The next step is the design identity. So this would be I think creating all of the colors and fonts and feel of the brand itself, because the next step after that is creating the touch points. So that would be actually applying the brand to all of these various touch points, like Twitter or a business card or a website, what have you. So that's really where the work gets done, is step 4. And then the 5th step is managing your assets, and this is so important. And I work for a fairly large company, and managing assets is just it's a constant work stream. You've got a big team of creative people. They all have different hats. Some of them are email promotions, some of them are print, and some of them are web. And they all need these assets, and so they need to be centrally located. Everybody needs to know where they are. Everybody needs to know how to use them. A lot of companies have branding guidelines. I mean, they used to have these giant, like 3-ring binders of branding guidelines that they would have all around the company. And these days, it's all digital, and they're usually using like a documentation hub that everybody has access to, so that they can see how they are and are not supposed to use the branding. So let's see. Oh, and then one thing that I just wanted to touch on is that I recognize that how I'm doing this is completely opposite. So as you see from this 5-step process, the step that I'm on right now is creating a touch point. It's number 4. I'm using YouTube as my first touch point to explore the branding process. So it's really kind of backwards. I'm technically on steps 1 and steps 4 at the same time. But I think that as I go through this process and I'm applying what I've learned to YouTube, I'll probably go back around to step 1 or rather step 4, to create the touch points and apply this branding to all the other pieces as well. And if this is a little easier for me, just because it's just me by myself, I'm not a giant company trying to negotiate this process with a bunch of different people. So it's simpler that way. Okay, that concludes the 5-step process. And the next portion of this video is a little exercise that I put together that just highlight 2 steps of the process, the strategy step and the identity step. So the first one, strategy, I was just thinking what's working well and what's not working so well. So if you think about the last video where I did a cross analysis of a lot of different YouTubers that I admire, not necessarily direct competitors, but I did a kind of a deep dive into their channels, and I made a list of things that I thought were working well for their channels and a list of things that I thought maybe weren't working so well. So that's coming up next. And then the next one is identity. So with all of those YouTubers, what I did is I pulled out what I thought were maybe personality traits of all these different YouTubers, and I made like a little matrix where it's a slider between one extreme and the other. And so you have to place yourself on one of the other extreme or somewhere in the middle. So who are you and who are you not? So I'm looking at all these YouTubers and I'm deciding, am I like this person? No, I'm not. So on to the next one. So let's just jump into the next part, the first part of this exercise, which is strategy. What's working well and what's not working well. So some of the YouTubers that I was looking at, what I thought, let's start with the not working well. I think this is interesting because in my experience as a UX designer for a fairly big company, we have an agile process, and part of the agile process, and I might get into this more later with some of my other videos, but I'm definitely going to talk about it because it informs a lot of what I'm doing here. But so the agile process has these 4 different ceremonies, is what they call them. And the last ceremony is called a retrospective, where you look back on the work that you did and you ask yourself what worked well and what didn't work well. And there's a third question, is what can you commit to do better in the future? Now that's not so relevant here because we're just comparing we're just comparing the YouTubers that I described in the last video. So what I thought was not working so well for some of these is they were a little bit unclear. You know, sometimes you look at these YouTubers and maybe it's a little too academic, like it's way over your head. You're not really understanding what they're talking about, maybe in a deep, intimate level. But that's okay because maybe you're just absorbing it and at a high level anyway. And then another one maybe is that some of these videos are too vague, or they're too vague, or they're too high level. It's kind of a pet peeve of mine, especially in the blogging industry. I know a lot of companies recognize the value of blogging, but if you're looking for content on the internet about a product or something, and you type in a keyword that might be very competitive, what you get is a bunch of blog garbage. They say top 5 tips for whatever, and it's the most vague, unhelpful content you've ever read. And it's like, man, what a waste of internet space. I can't believe this is #1 in the Google search results. So that's what I think. That same thing applies to YouTubing. Is like, I think that the value of this platform is that you've got experts here to help you do something very specific. So I don't think that YouTubers should be afraid to get down into the details and try to be as clear and concise as possible. Another one of the things that I thought was not working so well for certain YouTubers is they're inconsistent at posting. So they'll post once not even once a month. It might be once a month for 3 or 4 months in a row, and it'll be nothing for months. And then they come back a year and a half later and with another video. And I think that if you're gonna do this and you're gonna do it well, I think you need to stick to a consistent publishing schedule so that people can count on that content being there. I think even the algorithms probably know your posting schedule as well, and if they, and I shouldn't assume this, but I am assuming it, is that YouTube probably promotes consistent YouTubers. I'm sure that they reward you in the algorithm if you're consistent. So another thing, inconsistency wise, is that your videos are either way too long or they're way too short. I just saw in my feed the other day a 35-second video from a YouTuber that I actually love, but I just didn't bother to click on it because it's like 35 seconds. I'm not even gonna, I don't care to watch this. It's too short. Sometimes I've been turned off by videos that are way too long. I'm looking at Joe Rogan here, of course, with his 3-hour-long podcast. But specifically, I skip over the ones that are like topics that I'm not interested in, such as MMA. And some of the comedians I might tune into every now and then, but I usually skip those too. The ones that I'm most interested in listening to are the academics. So in the case of Joe Rogan, it's true that they are too long if you're not interested, but I don't think that too long videos are a bad thing, because what you're really looking for is that person that is interested in the content that you're talking about. So don't be afraid of too long, just know who your audience is I suppose the solution to that. So the next section here is negative emotion. Some of the things that I really can't stand about certain YouTubers is they have like these personality traits that they're really arrogant or grandiose, and that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. But I still listen to their content anyway because what they're putting out is useful and interesting to me. So, and that's just not my style personally. And I wouldn't even say that this isn't the what's not working so well for me. Not necessarily what's not working so well in general for the medium. If that's your style, go for it, because there's going to be people that are going to listen to that anyway. And same thing goes with basically all four of these. I have some other like in my notes here. Same thing goes for being incendiary or provocative, or being catty or dramatic, like talking about the other influencers on YouTube and picking them apart. I don't, every once in a while I will indulge in that kind of content, but I pretty much for the most part skip that stuff. And again, sometimes videos can be way too political and you don't agree with what they're saying. And this is something that I struggle with a lot, is do I not agree with the YouTuber, or do I just not like the way they're presenting their arguments? And I think it's really more the latter for myself. But if you're a political person and the way you're presenting your political viewpoint is just all of the above, grandiose, catty, incendiary, you're not using like intellectual points to validate your opinion, then I'm probably not going to give you the time of day. So, and I'm using this matrix and applying it to my own channel. So eventually this all of this stuff that I'm learning is going to trickle down into what I'm doing here. So let's go to the what's working well, because that's always the positive. It's nice to end on a positive note. So what I think is working well with all of these different YouTubers is the best ones have clearly written titles. And I've talked about this before where I really hate clickbait. And unfortunately, I bet clickbait works. Like if you're gonna write a clickbait title, you're gonna get more views on that video. It's just the unfortunate fact of how the internet works. But I think that if you're gonna do clickbait, make it clearly written so that people know what to expect in the video. And I I really enjoy clear, organized thinking, like what I'm doing here with presentations. I made a little PowerPoint presentation, and I'm looking at this as I'm going through this. Because what I'll be doing later is putting words up on the screen and going through my talk. But having two sets of notes where you have keywords up on the screen that people can follow along with what you're saying, but then you also have some more in-depth stuff that you're covering while you're talking. So I appreciate structure. I know some people can do off the cuff. I have no idea how they do it. But I think even the best YouTubers, usually you see them on their screen a lot. They have like a piece of paper in their hand, or they use it to tap it. So it's like a newsroom or something like that. But I have watched videos where it's just a rambling, incoherent mess. It's just a rant about something that really ticked them off. And I especially if it's a long rant, it's like, yeah, you made your point in the first 20 minutes, and now I'm going to turn it off because there's nothing more here for me to learn about. I'm also a big fan of intentional speech without having vocal clutter, and this is something that I'm currently working on because I'm not a very practiced speaker. This is a very new format for me. In fact, I still do probably have a lot of stage fright. If I were to do this in front of a room full of people, I'd probably be super nervous. But because I'm sitting here in my kitchen and I sort of feel like I'm just talking to one person, that I don't feel quite as nervous. But no vocal clutter. So just when you have a moment in your head where you're trying to have your thoughts catch up with your words, don't try your best or practice not leaning on vocal clutter, because it's very jarring for the listener. Eventually, and if you have too much of it, it almost, that's all they ever hear. It may even become annoying after a while. So I think that if this is something that you consider to be a problem, is practice a lot, or just be mindful of it while you're talking. And I would say under the clarity angle is behaving like a consultant. So when you're a consultant, you need to be clear to your client about what they need and what services you can provide. And often the client has budget restrictions, and so you're saying to them, okay, so this is your budget, so this is what I think is essential, what you really need to do. And I think if you're going to behave like a consultant on YouTube, is that you want to distill things down into what's the most essential thing that people should be thinking about in the case of YouTube. So under the next one here, under consistent, and now I'm kind of repeating myself, because as you can see here up on the screen, is that these two lines go back and forth. They're basically the thesis and antithesis of each other. So posting consistently, some of these YouTubers post live, and I'm not quite at that level because, well, nobody would be there anyway. I'm still just a very small YouTuber. And a lot of these YouTubers, not only do they post consistently like every day, but they also post at the same time. So people know that when they log in at 10 a.m., there's going to be another episode dropped from your favorite YouTuber. Consistency. So another thing would be thumbnails. And I've talked about this before, and I've learned this already, that thumbnails are very important. So that's going to be one of the first branding touch points that I have done or will work on. I did one in the last video. I made a thumbnail for it, and I'm probably going to stick with that design. But be consistent in your thumbnails. People can see that and click on it right away. Consistency in documenting wins and losses. Is sometimes YouTubers only document the good things, the things that went well, and I really appreciate hearing about the losses, the failures as well, because you can learn a lot from failures. And if you're not shy about posting your failures up on the internet for everybody to see, that would be actually really helpful for other people, I think, that are going through this as well. So the next section here is positive emotion. So we talked about negative emotion already. So what kinds of positive emotion can you instill in your YouTube channel? Humor, of course. This isn't my forte, but I did think that there are some channels out there that I think thrive on humor, and it's working well for them. Some of these YouTubers are really good at empathy, so understanding what the customer needs are and catering their content to their customer. Or sometimes you see those react videos too, where they're reacting to a TV show or something, and you can really see the empathy on their face, the pain that the character is experiencing in the video that they're watching. That's just one little piece of empathy, though. I think at a bigger scale, empathy is really understanding a customer and what they want and what they expect from you. Some of these YouTubers also, in terms of positive emotion, I would also say that a chill space, a space to chill out with your favorite YouTuber. It's been a popular trend in the past where YouTubers sit on the floor in their bedroom, and it sort of feels like you're just like sitting there having a one-to-one discussion with them in a private place, like in their bedroom. Sort of what you're doing here in my kitchen. So I think of this as being like a place for you and I to hang out in my kitchen and talk about branding and what you need to be working on for your channel. I also think authenticity is working really well for people. If you come across as authentic, people, I think, pick up on that right away. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have a persona on the internet, but I think that you should contrast it with some authenticity as well, because if you're constantly doing a persona on the internet, it might be kind of exhausting for you to make content. And finally, I think what's working well in terms of positive emotion is what I've seen some YouTubers do is community building. One of my favorite YouTubers is a pagan and folklore, I guess I would say, I don't know if she's professionally trained in this topic, but I think it's more of a hobby for her. But one of the things that she's done is built an online community for pagans that also are interested in the same topic. Because one of the problems with this particular group of people is that they tend to be very isolated, doing their own spiritual pathwork by themselves. And they don't have a church to go to, or many don't. And so she's really built a community online where she meets together with these people once a week. So I thought that was really well done on her part. And the last category is, I missed one, didn't I? I missed boring. So, yeah, well, that's okay. We'll just jump over boring because it's too boring anyway. Sorry, I'm all over the place. So, spice. Spice is the opposite of boring. I think a lot of good YouTubers out there, especially the professional ones, they have maybe some intro music, or they have a distinct sound that they play so that, this used to be big in the radio business where they have like sound effects that go along with certain segments of the show, or catchphrases. If you have a phrase that you say over and over again, it sort of builds the camaraderie up with the people that are listening, because now they know, and catchphrases can also be kind of an inside joke. So people can, oh yeah, it's that catchphrase again. Some of my favorite radio shows had catchphrases. And a lot of the good YouTubers out there, they have these multimedia presentations where they include videos along with their videos, or they're doing reacts. And I think that adds a lot of interest and spice to the channel. And this is the one that's the most important, is unique insight. And that is unique, because a lot of insight or intellect is often derivative from all the other, the idea mill that's out there. And there's a lot of people that are talking about the same ideas. But if you can be unique in the sense that you can take all of this, like this miasma of ideas and then distill it down into a unique insight that only you have and nobody else does. And that's really hard to find on YouTube. And unfortunately, I would not count myself among those people that have unique insight, at least not yet. Maybe someday. I'm getting there. I'm wiser by the minute. So... and then the last thing under the spice category is highlighting simple beauty, highlighting the parts of your routine, or giving people insight into what it is to be you, the little pieces of beauty that you see all around you, if you can incorporate that into the channel. And of course that really is more towards the lifestyle channels, where they're promoting a certain type of lifestyle. And not necessarily for this format that I'm doing right now, where it's purely informative, and I don't really have any of these little special clips to add in. Maybe someday. And of course I don't have the editing tools for that just yet. It's something I'm kind of thinking about. So, and then the last thing is the time span. So what does that really mean? I couldn't really come up with a better word for this, but what I was thinking is doing work while you're on a live stream. And I've seen some of the artists do this, where they just turn on a camera and just paint. They're not talking to the camera, they're not engaging with it, or sometimes they're doing tutorials and stuff. But like, one of my favorite YouTubers is Jonathan Pajot, and he's an icon carver. So he carves religious icons out of wood. And sometimes he just turns on the camera and you can just watch him carving. It's really relaxing. So I guess that's what I mean by time span, is you can watch pieces of art being created before your eyes. And sometimes they speed it up too, where it's just a time lapse, so that something that may have taken 8, 10, 40, 20 hours, whatever, they can condense it down into maybe 2 or 5 minute long videos. Those are pretty cool to watch. And then the last one is taking the audience on a journey. So you're trying to use your channel to tell a story. I think storytelling is a lot more engaging than just laying out the facts. So storytelling always wins. Storytelling is where the money is. So if you can build in stories or anecdotes, and that's one thing that maybe I should be doing more. I do draw on my experience in graphic design a lot while I'm talking, but I don't necessarily tie it to a funny story that happened to me or anything like that, so I'll have to keep that in mind. So that concludes the strategy exercise. So this would be a great thing for you to work on if you're also looking into just branding in general, of course. I mean, you take all of your competitors and you ask yourself, what's working well and what's not working so well. And I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about this. You can learn a lot from just asking those 2 questions. The next section of this exercise is for identity. And so as I was going through all of the YouTubers in the last video, I was listing off some personality attributes that I could find. And I made a list here. I'm going to display it up on the screen here. And it's not the full list. The full list is on my website. But what you can see is there's 2 pairs. The first one is off the cuff, and the next one is prepared. So, for example, in this particular channel, what I'm doing here is a little bit off the cuff, and it's a little bit prepared. So maybe I would put my slider right in the middle between those 2 extremes. The next one would be academic/researcher versus a lay person, just an average person. And again, I wouldn't call myself an expert in design because I'm not a professor. I don't have any formal training in teaching, but I'm not quite just a lay person either, because I'm professionally employed as a designer. So again, I would probably put my dot right in the middle, or my check mark in the middle of that. And so you can go through these different pairs that I have up on the screen and just move your slider around from one to the next. And if there's any personality traits that maybe are missing, then add your own and place your slider in there. Because and one of the things that I was thinking about when I was looking at all these different YouTubers is, you know, I'm not a very playful person. So I tend to be more on the serious side. And you can look at other YouTubers who are playful and you can say, well, that's not really my style. So I'm not gonna do content like that. So this brings me to the last part of this video. These are the questions that you can ask yourself. And again, I'm going to put these questions in the video outline. The outline is going to be linked in the description. And you can click on that and go to the list of questions. You can copy paste it into your own Word doc and work through these. But just so that you know what the questions are, and it might intrigue you to go look at that article. So here they are. Here are the questions. Why are consumers loyal to you? Who is in charge of making decisions for this branding exercise? Why should someone choose your content over someone else's? What makes you a leader in this space? What type of branding do you need? Why do you need to start the process of branding? What's working well? What's not working well? Who am I and who aren't I? So that takes me to the last part of this video, which is the key takeaway section. The key takeaway of this video is these 4 questions that I spent most of the time talking about. What's working well and what's not working so well? Who are you and who aren't you? Before I sign off, I wanted to draw your attention to another link that's going to be in the description. It's a link to some bonus content that I've been putting together. So I've got 3 of these videos under my belt, and as I release videos, I'm taking these questions and compiling them together into a single worksheet. I've got a branding worksheet. And if you're joining me right now, it's still new, but it's going to be a living document, something that I'm going to be constantly updating with each video that I produce. It's going to have all the questions collected into one single document. So it'll take you time to get through it, but if you take a little bit at a time, spend 15 minutes on it every day, I think these are very important questions to ask yourself as you're building a channel. Or, I mean, even if you already have an established channel. It'll help you clarify your voice and your vision for why you're doing this. So what's coming next? So the next video that I'm going to be doing is on who are stakeholders. And that's an umbrella term that can cover a lot of different people. They all have different roles to play in defining your brand. And that's pages 8 through 9 in the book. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time in the next video. Bye!